So, Duane, how would we do as roommates?
We would not be good roommates, my
Why?
friend.
Why?
Oh, I don't know. I'm an old man. I kind of go to bed early, get up late, So who knows? No, I think we'd be all right.
So
But
Mike would be a bad influence on you? Is that
yeah,
what
it
we're
could
saying?
be. Could
Yeah,
be.
but you and I would be doing Egg McMuffins every morning.
Oh yeah,
We
yeah.
would.
And McRibs every night,
We
right?
would, we would, we would, within a year, we would both be diagnosed with diabetes.
You got it. I am sure. Hey, can I say a little bit about your appraisal class? Jay Joseph, he is awesome. He's well worth learning, taking time to come and learn that. And so I would encourage anybody to come on and see that he does a wonderful job.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to it. So he came
And-
highly recommended.
And one of your things on your paper, ER and so forth, you take on your listing agreement.
Yes.
Don't forget, folks, that your code of ethics and your commissioner standards require what? When they sign, they get a copy. And so you better have two copies, one for them to keep and one for you to take. Because I can tell you I've had that situation where agents took their paper copy just like you. They signed off on it. They said, okay, we'll get that to you later on. They forget to do it. And now the client has a argument that they can file complaints against you. And so just take two copies with you.
Or take a picture of all the ones you.
Yeah, either one, but take two copies.
All right. Good to know.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Let's. Excuse me. Let's jump into broker talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, you actually sent over a whole list of things to talk about today. So unlike Kyle, who just kind of
wings it
5
with you,
minutes
huh?
beforehand, what do you want to talk about? All right, so let's talk about the issue of time is of the essence, and then withdrawing offers and counter offers.
So as you know, we get this question quite often in our broker from agents. Well, the offer has a expiration date on it, which is not really an expiration date; it's a withdrawal date, right? That's when that. If you read that language, it's really that the party issuing that document, whether it's a counter offer, whether it's a purchase contract, they are actually withdrawing that at that specific time. And so that time of the essence does become very important. Where we also see things is, especially on the counteroffer process, is agents don't realize, they think they have until that time and date to be able to return that accepted or counteroffer document, right? Well, realize that time is of the essence, that party who issued that contract, that offer, or that counteroffer can withdraw it at any time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's happened. And people are upset from the fact that, hey, I have until 5 o'clock tonight to respond. No, you don't. And so understand that those time frames are there for a reason for the issuing party to withdraw their offer. But at the end of the day, if your client is interested in moving forward, with either a counteroffer or a acceptance, they need to do that in a timely manner. Don't wait till the next morning or till the deadline.
Yeah, I've gotten to an argument with a lot of agents out there over this issue where I've had a client, and generally it's, definitely with offers as well, but also with counter offers. We submit it, then the buyer has a change of heart for whatever reason, and then I don't know. I what I do is I do all three. If we're going to withdraw an offer, withdraw a counter offer, I'm doing an email, I'm doing a text, and I'm going to call the agent just to protect my buyer. And then I get into an argument with the other agent goes, well, you can't do that.
Yep. Yeah.
Well,
yeah. And
yes, I can, and I'm doing it.
It's right. And it's not uncommon for that to happen. And that's why I thought it would be a good topic to talk about a little bit.
And it's also delivery. I mean, I think
Yes.
we have to keep that in mind as well. It's not that you call the other agent on the phone as the recipient
Correct.
of that counteroffer or contract and then say to them, oh, I got it all done. Well, guess what? If you don't send it to me, you don't have it all done.
You're right. And that's a technicality that people fall into a trap once in a while on.
So to clarify that, I represent a buyer, I represent Heather. Todd's the listing agent. I send over my offer.
Yep.
Todd's client actually signs and accepts the offer.
Yep.
But Todd hasn't delivered it back to me.
Correct.
I'm still in a position to be able to withdraw it because Todd didn't deliver that offer to me.
Even if they tell you they've got it signed.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. The verbal doesn't count. It's got to be that actual delivery of the acceptance. So.
Okay. Then what if Todd does deliver it via email, but I haven't checked my emails and or I haven't sent that email and notified my buyer that the seller's accepted, is that considered delivered?
Yes. Once it hits his inbox, that's considered delivered.
Yeah, the way EULA standard works is just so if you've got Gmail, when Gmail receives the email from whatever sending party it was, whether you open it, whether you download it, no matter what, it is considered delivered as of your server's acceptance.
Yep.
All right, so then
Same thing with all other things too, like 3-day cures, everything.
Yeah.
okay, so with that, I'm gonna skip here because I love this one, you know, and so the question is, can an offer, counter offer, listing, or buyer broker agreement be brought back to life after it expires? And so we see this a lot.
Yep.
I represent Heather. We submit an offer, and we say, all right, Todd, terms of acceptance is tonight at need to accept it by 5 o'clock tonight. Now we roll into 6 o'clock. Okay,
Yep.
that 5 p.m. is expired.
Yep.
Can it be brought back to life without me having to submit a brand new offer and putting together the entire contract again?
So can it? The answer is yes, with mutual agreement. I don't like it. It does create some ambiguity in the documentation of the file. In reality, if both parties are on the same page and proper addendums are done to extend that time period in the offer, the original offer, it probably can. My advice as a broker team is, though, don't go down that road. It happens quite often, and that's why I wanted to have a conversation about that. Offers, counter offers especially, tend to, depending on where the market is, but they tend to kind of slip on their time frame sometimes. And it's, Todd, you're a little.
Oh my gosh, I am so on this with you, Duane. You have no idea. And in my training classes, in my C classes,
Heather, I'm
I
going to
tell them-
disappear because I think I think I'm about to get hammered
no,
right
no.
now.
But I tell the agents when they, at least in class, if you talk to a real estate attorney. Now remember, Article 26 of the Constitution gives every licensee in the state of Arizona the right to draft a real estate purchase contract or documents that are incidental to the transfer of real property. But what it doesn't say is at the same caliber as one who's passed the bar. And in reality, that's what you're doing. You have to draft a document, that withstands all of the contractual obligations,
Yes.
of the state of Arizona. So when you are, making an agreement between two agents, that's like two attorneys having a conversation without actually practicing the law. So the reality is you should be rewriting this. But what am I saying? Hold on. Let me think about this. Or let me say it this way. You're reprinting that one page with a date change to something else. You could do that on your cell phone. You're sending over a new page. You don't have to necessarily send over everything, but you just need your consumer's initials on that one page. Or you could send over the whole document, which is what Duane and I would prefer. But you could make that change in a fraction of a second, send it back to your client, get initials, and send it right back over to the seller. With technology today, that change is easier than writing a counteroffer and getting everybody to sign it. Probably.
Okay, but I'm going to push back because that's not always how the real world works. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Because I'm going back to time is of the essence. I'm representing my buyer, and I got to lock this thing up. I am famous for completely putting my fingers in my ear and going, la, 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 I can't hear you when you tell me when your seller is reviewing all offers.
Right.
If it's a Friday and you're like, my seller's reviewing all offers Monday, you're getting an offer from me, and your seller's going to have 5 hours to respond.
Yeah.
If I think that the seller is willing to jump on it, I don't want to. A lot of bad things can happen in 60 minutes. So having now to get my buyer to re-sign, send over, and everything like that, sometimes for me, it's just simpler and quicker. send over the counter, or I'll send over extending the terms of acceptance
So yeah.
by this date because I time is of the essence for
So
me.
in those situations, Mike, you're absolutely right. That counteroffer can come back to extend that period of time, along with any other terms that the seller is. And if the parties come to a mutual agreement, that's why I say, can it be brought to life? Yeah, it can, if the documentation is done right.
But in
I,
fairness, though, if we're like a week later, probably it's time for a new offer.
yes, absolutely. And I had that conversation with some, and I will tell you, there is differences with listings and buyer broker agreements than there are with offers and counteroffers, in my opinion. We get calls quite often where agents say, "Hey, my listing expired yesterday, and I forgot to get an addendum. Can we just get an addendum now to extend that closing or that listing agreement?" And the answer on that one is no. MLS will not allow that.
Mm-hmm.
They, in order, once it hits expired, we can't bring it back to an active status, even at the broker level, without a listing extension signed prior to the expiration date. So that's not only a broker policy, it's also an MLS policy. Buyer broker agreements are similar. So just know that if you're dealing in those two documents, have it on your calendar when you need to extend them if you're going to do it.
All right. So then, next question, not on the list because I'm getting to the point now where I'm having buyer broker agreements coming up to expire.
Yep.
Right. I understand what you just said. If it expires, I'm starting from scratch. If
Yep.
it hasn't expired,
Yep.
can I extend the expiration date on a buyer broker agreement through an addendum?
Yes, the buyer tenant employment agreement addendum will allow you to do that. Absolutely.
Okay.
And I would recommend especially on the buyer broker agreements, is those terms not be a long extension time frame, right? So when you're doing buyer broker, some people are saying let's do a year. Well, that creates some issues in my opinion. You should probably be doing 2 or 3 month buyer broker agreements and then extending them if you haven't found a property for them. So
I'm doing 30-year ones.
good for you.
and then my kids inherit my
Okay.
position on them. All right.
That doesn't work, just so you know.
All right. Side note: a couple agents have texted in about our appraisal class. Can agents with other brokerages attend? I think half of the agents coming on Wednesday are from other brokerages, so the answer is yes.
Awesome.
And so
Yep.
we'll just have Heather put the link in there: sixfigureevents.com. All right. I this one is near and dear to my heart because I've been guilty of this, not handling this right. So I'm just going to be candid and vulnerable out there. I've gotten my, I've had a few stern talks from our broker.
Notice that high pitch in his
So you're representing a buyer. It is time for the pre-closing walkthrough, and your buyer cannot attend in person, and they ask you to do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And obviously, we don't advise that at all. There's a lot of things that can go wrong in those situations, and so what we're advising is that the buyer have either a family member or a friend, somebody else, stand in their place and give that written authority for them to do that. It's just, I can tell you there are issues with that.
I know.
And I've had those calls where, in this one case in particular, there was allegedly a water leak under a sink, and our agent didn't find that, and of course now the buyer was upset because they said they asked our agent to go out and do that walkthrough, and so then they wanted us to be paying for these water issues and whatnot. So it's just not a good thing. And when you're doing that walkthrough, that buyer is there to do what? They're to do two things: make sure that the property is still in the same condition as it was when it went under contract, and that any repairs that were agreed to by the seller have been done in a workmanship-like manner. That's it.
What about my client's out of state, and I do the walkthrough through FaceTime, virtual?
Still problematic. It's better than just not anything, and it's better than you doing it individually without the video. But I still don't advise that you do that.
All right, and then as far as paperwork goes, my buyer cannot attend.
Yep.
nor has a family or friend be able to do it, then on the final walkthrough form, is the buy? How are we handling the paperwork? Is the buyer waiving their right?
In my opinion, yes.
Okay.
They have to waive that right. Yep.
Yeah, signing anything is also another thing you never want to do when you're in representing one of the parties to the transaction. You never want to sign, even if you had proper instruction from your a client. Just stay away from that. And that's
Yep.
kind of the same thing that Mike you were just talking about.
So the bottom line, don't do those walkthroughs on behalf of your client.
So you just don't show up. I mean,
Yeah.
because that's where I that was the problem that I got into it.
Of
My
course.
client's in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Doesn't
I get
have
it.
anyone here.
I get it.
And somebody's got to go and make sure that the house hasn't burnt down to the ground or whatever the case is. And I inadvertently just said, hey, AC works good. And
Yeah.
oops.
Yeah. Well, and it, and us as practitioners, we want to be helpful.
Yeah.
We want to do these things to make a smooth transaction for our client. I get it, but just realize the liability you're taking on by doing it.
All right, Binzer and Binzer addendums. And before I let you get into it, so my first question, because we're trained and we're taught that the lender should never see a Binzer. And it's not part of the documents required for a lender to see. Whether you want them to or not, that's up to you. But it's not a requirement. Lender does not have a requirement to actually see the Binzer. So when we're creating Binzer addendums, up at the top of the addendum, there's that line. You normally put addendum 1, addendum 2, addendum 3. For me, right or wrong, if I put a number on there, then it now is part of the real estate purchase contract, and then probably should get sent, unless I'm wrong, sent to the lender. So
Yep.
what I'm putting up there, instead of putting a number, I just put Binzer, so that we know that that particular addendum is attached to the Binzer and not the purchase contract.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard that before.
So you're not reviewing my files.
No, I've got people to do that.
Okay.
Have your peeps call my peeps.
But at the end of the day, that whole issue around addendums and who gets to see them and what, I can make arguments pretty strongly that if the lender isn't seeing even the Binzer itself, it is arguably loan fraud. Why? Because if that information that's on those documents has a impact on the underwriting of that loan and it's being withheld from that party intentionally, I think you may have some problems. I will also tell you, though, that in many, many years of doing this role, I haven't seen that come back and bite anybody. So just know that I would not advise that you try to cover up information from any party in the transaction, including the lender, on these things. So be that whatever it may, on the issue of Binzers and drafting them, there are a few things that we're seeing kind of consistently in the broker's office around the Binzer process. One of them is the buyer doesn't want the seller to do repairs. They want a credit in lieu of those repairs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how do they go about doing that? Well, first of all, remember that in the Binzer process, you have to identify the things that the buyer disapproves of based on their due diligence. So you have to put that list on there.
Regardless of whether you're
Oh,
trying to
yes.
negotiate money.
That's
and that's
correct.
what agents do. They just leave out all the list of repairs
Correct.
and just put in some sort of numerical value.
Correct. And that's technically not accurate. You have to list those items out. And if the buyer wants only to have the seller credit a dollar figure, then you need to specifically say that on the Binzer. Seller to only provide a credit in the amount of X dollars, see attached addendum. And then you complete an addendum that goes along with your Binzer to the seller. Okay? And that, if you fail to put that little piece of information in there that the buyer only wants a credit in your Binzer, now if you just prepare the Binzer the way with the disapproved items and provide an addendum that says credit of X number of dollars, don't put that little piece of language in there. Now the seller's got the option. They can either do the repairs or they can do the credit. And if they do either one of them in full, your buyer's ability to cancel that transaction is done. And so just be careful of how you structure that if you're on the buyer's side and the buyer only wants to have that credit. Okay.
Yeah, you know that addendum we spoke of, Duane? On the first line of the AAR addendum, it says that this is an addendum to the contract.
I know.
And so, again, I think that line is more confusing and potentially is attachable than anything to do
Correct.
in the number section of it. It could be counteroffer number 1, but you'd have to change that line to say, and you could do it on the form in the lines below. You could say on line 1, this is not an addendum to the contract. This is an addendum to the BINSR,
Yeah.
But again, just make
Yep.
sure you change that line, because otherwise that's the one that ties it to the contract.
Exactly. So that's the issue on the buyer side that we're seeing with the BINSR, and then on the seller side, same type of thing. They get a BINSR from a buyer, and there's a list of items that this buyer wants repaired, and the seller says, "I don't want to do any repairs, but I'll give you a credit." So how do you handle that? And you do an addendum. You would specifically write what the seller will or will not do, again, and then you would issue an addendum if that's what they're willing to do. So we at the broker team, we're willing to help you walk through that. Just don't wing it too much without some help if you're not sure.
All right.
So
All right, we have on the list buyer broker exclusive agreements and new home sales.
oh yes, I did put that on there. And why do you suppose that's on there?
I think it's on there because of me.
Well, you didn't come to mind, but okay, I'll take that.
No, I think the question. I'm just going to make an assumption here.
Yeah.
The question is I'm filling out a buyer broker agreement, and I would like to have 2 different numbers for compensation based on a resale home as opposed to a new home, because a lot of builders are offering higher co-broke amounts. And in fairness, I all day long, put me in front of the Supreme Court. I can make the case that new home sales actually require more expertise and more work.
And I know you argue that with me, and
if we were roommates, this is
True or
what we
not.
would be. This is what we would be talking about at night.
yeah. Well, and
We can solve all the world's
and since
problems.
I sit in this seat, I get to make the final decision, right?
So
But it is true, and I will tell you that we at the broker team, we see a lot of issues around that, and I will tell you that part of the NAR settlement agreement has been specifically talked about is the desire of the buyer's agent or buyer's broker to want to receive whatever amount that the seller is willing to pay for compensation. It is that sentiment is in violation of the settlement agreement. Just because a seller is offering whatever they're offering for compensation to the buyer's side doesn't mean that you are entitled to that if you have an exclusive employment agreement for something less than that. And so we are pretty strong in our brokerage about the fact that residential is residential. And I know you and I disagree on this, and the fact that a resale and a new home would take different skill sets to sell. But at the end of the day, residential, in our opinion, is residential, and we have a very hard time justifying an increase in compensation other than, in fact, even in your first statement, the seller, the builder, is offering more. And so that's why I can justify it by offering these additional skills.
Gotcha.
In reality, whatever that seller is offering has no bearing on what your compensation as a buyer's broker will be. And so just understand, when you're negotiating on behalf of your client, on behalf of yourself for your client on compensation, residential in our office is going to be residential. And so whether it's new or resale. Land, I can give it to you. There's a different compensation structure typically on land and typically on commercial. you can have that. I will also tell you that the NAR has come out with statements that says you can have multiple employment agreements. So, based on different types of the services offered, commercial, residential, property management, and so forth.
All right, so we got about 3 minutes left. So
Okay.
let's talk about buyer broker agreement addendums, and then
I think
if
we
you can
talked
do
about
both.
that.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
already talked about it. So personal property included in the sale. The
Yeah.
thing that when I when I go to bed at night and I hear your voice in my head, Duane, and if we were roommates, that would happen more frequently.
You hear my
is-
snoring is what you'd hear.
Yeah, yeah. We are not furniture brokers, and
I would hope
and
not.
and,
Yeah, yeah,
and,
yeah.
and so forth. But how are you handling? And that was more just kind of throwing in the furniture
Yep.
in the sale,
Yep.
but personal property
Yep.
included in the sale. What are we
Yep.
talking about?
Well, invariably, especially on cash deals, but even on finance deals, there is sometimes a negotiation regarding personal property. It's not the standard stuff, not the microwave, or not the refrigerator, washer, dryer type stuff. And as an agent for either party, buyer or seller, you don't want to get involved in that. And what we advise is that is an agreement between buyer and seller, outside the escrow, outside the contract. You need to advise the two parties, do an inventory and a bill of sale outside. We can give you the documents, but you guys got to do your inventory and do your bill of sale. I can tell you, I had an agent recently had a buyer who wanted to purchase most of the personal property in the house. And our agent did the right thing, said, I can't help you with that, but you tell me what you want, and you guys got to do an inventory. Well, they chose not to do an inventory between the buyer and seller, but they said, here's what we want. And they sent over an email. Included in that was the master bedroom set. So our agent, copied and pasted out of that email to the listing agent and said, this is what my buyer would like to purchase, and we can they can put a bill of sale together. Guess what happened? The very bottom of that, when she copied and pasted, she missed the master bedroom set. So it wasn't included when it went over to this listing agent. And guess what was gone when the deal closed? All of the master bedroom stuff. And guess who bought a master bedroom set? As our agent, unfortunately. And so those things do happen. And when they start talking personal property, it can be anything from silverware on up. So just be sure to do an inventory and let it be between buyer and seller, and have your own.
All right, and I mean we are now up
I
against
know.
the clock, but
Sorry.
but no, my question in that is, if we handle it properly, do the bill of sale properly, and then buyer gets there and stuff's missing, or we do the pre walkthrough and stuff's missing. Is this a title issue? Is this something that can hold up, or it's
an issue between the two parties, and we're out of it.
Civil issue.
Yep.
All right. Hey, good stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks, Duane.
You're welcome.
All right,
guys.
we leave everybody with the quote of the day. Never iron a four-leaf clover. You don't want to press your luck. I don't know what that means, but thanks,
like
Haley, for that, and we appreciate everybody joining us. Go out and sell a home.